All right, we begin with some breaking news just coming in. Iran has issued a stark warning to U.S. and Israel against targeting its oil and energy infrastructure. And according to Iranian media, Iran's Armed Forces Unified Command has said that any attack on country's oil and energy infrastructure will lead to attacks on energy infrastructure owned by oil companies cooperating with the U.S. in the region. Iran's Khatam al-Anbiya central headquarters issued a stark warning against any hostile military moves targeting the nation's vital ports and energy infrastructure. Now, in a statement, it declared, and I'm quoting here, "We will turn the region's oil and gas to flames with the slightest attack on Iran's energy infrastructure and ports." Now, this warning comes as U.S. President Donald Trump says that U.S. have bombed every military target on Iran's Karg Island. The U.S. President has said he stopped short of bombing the oil infrastructure on the island. He, however, warned that he could reconsider this if Iran or anyone else decides to interfere with the free and safe passage of ships through the Strait of Hormuz. And now, in a post earlier on Truth Social, Trump had termed the island as the crown jewel of Iran, saying that he's stopped short of bombing the oil infrastructure on the island. Now, he, however, has warned that he can't consider this if Iran or anyone else decides to interfere with the free and safe passage of ships through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, the Karg Island, just for context, is a roughly 30-kilometer off Iran's coast in Bushehr province, and it is far more significant than its size do suggest. Now, the 20-square-kilometer island, it handles almost all of Iran's crude exports, since much of the Iranian coastline is too shallow to handle the super tankers. And with maritime traffic in the Strait of Hormuz and oil prices spiking, Trump has now assured that U.S. Navy will soon begin escorting tankers through the Gulf-critical Strait of Hormuz, although he has refrained from giving a timeline for the same.
Earlier, you're speaking with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and are your objectives the same in terms of ending the war?
I think they might be a little different, I guess. You know, they're a different country than we are.
And well, to discuss more right now on this from Washington, D.C., we're now being joined live by Dr. Charles Cupton, who is a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations. Thank you so much for joining on the broadcast. Always a pleasure talking to you. Let's, of course, begin with the big news right now. Donald Trump has said U.S. strikes has obliterated military targets on Karg Island in Iran, but oil facilities were spared for now. We've seen a reaction from Iran right now as well. And Trump had warned of action can change if shipping in the Strait of Hormuz is now threatened. Do you think this is a threat that will work on Iran, considering how important this island is for them?
You know, so far, Iran has responded to increasing American pressure by increasing the retaliation and the threats of retaliation. I think that the strike against Karg Island is an important move by the United States. We are also hearing that there are around 2,000 Marines that are deploying from Okinawa to the Middle East. My guess is that their mission, if the war is still going on a week from now, will be to take control of Karg Island, because that would in some ways pose a direct threat to Iran's economic lifeline. On the other hand, the Iranians are saying, as you just said, you do that, we're going to go after your oil installations. We're going to up the ante. We're going to mine the Strait of Hormuz. So right now we're in a tit-for-tat game of escalation. I think the United States and Israel have the upper hand in military terms, but Iran thus far has proven to be, I think, a much tougher target than Donald Trump had expected.
You mentioned Okinawa, and I'll come to that. But before this, how do you assess this decision by Trump? Because we know in history that during the 1970 Iranian hostage, Jimmy Carter, the president then, did not take any action. Even after that, Ronald Reagan also did not. He took an aggressive approach, but did not touch Karg Island. How do you assess Trump's move on this Karg Island right now?
Well, you know, I think that the Trump administration is feeling its way forward. I do think that Donald Trump wants this to be a shorter war because he did come into office saying no more forever wars in the Middle East. Now he has gotten the country into a very significant war. And I do think he's going to be looking for some sort of off-ramp, not tonight, not tomorrow, but within the next 3 or 4 weeks. And so I see Trump's move as a way of trying to tighten the pressure on Iran, to say, okay, so far you've hit back at us, we're going to raise the ante. And I do think that you're going to see more and more punishing strikes from the United States and Israel. And that's because the more they are able to degrade the ballistic missile system, degrade the drone system, degrade command and control, the harder it will be for Iran to retaliate. We don't yet know how many missiles and how many drones Iran has left, but we do know that there has been a clear decline over the past week in Iran's ability to punch back.
And while you say that, we have seen them being able to sustain it for so long. Do you think there is an underestimation of Iran's power at this moment, with, of course, the new leader in right there? Of course, we have Pete Hegseth saying that he has been injured, but we don't know more about that. But do you think there is an underestimation of Iran, considering the fact that they have stretched this on for now 15 days?
No question about that. I do think that the Trump administration dramatically underestimated Iran's ability, number one, to hang tough in the face of these attacks, and number two, to carry out a campaign of retaliation that is really going to the mat. This is full throttle. And I'm guessing, we don't know, but I do think that Trump expected the regime, having been weakened by the economic crisis, having been weakened by the crackdown on protesters. Several thousand, maybe as many as 20,000 Iranians were killed in the streets earlier this year. I think he thought this was a brittle regime, that air power would push it over the edge and the Iranian people would take to the streets and overthrow it. That hasn't happened. This is a very deep regime. It's a very wide regime. I think the prospect of regime change through this war is very unlikely. And as a consequence, the goal here has to be to convince the Iranian regime that it cannot win.
And in reference to that, in an article, you have stated that Trump should aim to neutralize the Iran regime, not destroy it. In this context, as of now, what you mentioned, if you could just make us understand how does that happen in this situation where there's a full-blown war, and now we have Trump now targeting the Karg Island?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the United States learned the hard way that toppling regimes through force is very dangerous, because we toppled the Iraqi regime, we toppled the Afghan regime, we toppled the Libya regime, and what do we get? We got chaos. We got Islamic State.
Okay, there seems to be some hindrance.
Iran.
Okay.
That are inside the structure of the Islamic State, who decide that they are better off trying to cut some kind of deal with the Trump administration and then reconsolidating power, rebuilding the economy. And I do think that that's a deal that Trump will be willing to take, as long as it puts real constraints on Iran's military capability, precisely because in domestic terms, in the terms of the price of oil, the disruption to the global economy, I don't think Trump can afford a long war. I don't think he wants a long war.
And because you mentioned long war, of course, you also mentioned Okinawa, the Tripoli, USS Tripoli, that has been, according to Pete Hegseth, he has allowed it to move from where it's literally the other region. It's in Taiwan, between Taiwan and Philippines, and it will take approximately 2 weeks. Does it actually, indicate that this is going to be more than 2 weeks? Because even getting the Tripoli to West Asian region is going to take 2 weeks.
Well, it may be that the movement of those troops, and it is a movement that has been broadcast publicly, is meant as a bargaining tool to say, our Marines are coming. If they get there, they are going to do things that you might not like, including taking control of Karg Island. Whether this war is still going on 2 weeks from now, I think it's difficult to say. The Trump administration has also thought about arming proxies. There were reports of the US talking to Kurds, both Iranian Kurds and Iraqi Kurds in Iraq, perhaps sending them in to the country to try to be the vanguard of some kind of rebellion against the regime. I think these are very dangerous ideas because it could potentially trigger a broader civil war. So at least for now, I do think the Trump administration is aiming to tame the regime, not topple the regime. And I think that is a wise course of action. When that taming comes, when we will see some sort of diplomatic breakthrough that would include the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, which is a must-have for Donald Trump, at this point, very difficult to predict.